Hey guys, welcome back to WatchGauge. My name is John Keel, and I am very excited to be making this video. As many of you know, I started WatchGauge back, we launched in September 1st, but I'd been working on WatchGauge and building it and getting it ready for, a good 8-10 months prior to that. Early on, one of the brands that has been on my radar is a brand I'm about to introduce to you right now. Many of you may be familiar with the brand, but this is one of the very first micro brands that ever caught my eye. I think in terms of style and their marketing messages and just the whole brand overall really always spoke to me. It sung to me. It was one of the first brands in the micro brand world that I really, looked at and said, gee, I love that. So that'll bring me to the wrist check. Let's take a look, and my new brand on WatchGauge is Stratton. Straton watches. So I have I've been in contact with Kyle, the owner of Stratton, for a very long time. We were trying to make things happen. I tended to get busy doing other things. He was busy, whatever the case may be, and we finally put it together. And one thing that's about Stratton that really, I think, always made me just look at them and just say, wow, first of all, they're very different, but they're very 70s retro style. And I don't know how many of you guys were around in the 70s. Were you born yet? Were you in college and heavily impaired? I don't know. I myself was a kid back in the 70s, a young kid back in the 70s. And over the last couple of days, thinking about making this video, thinking about the brand, thinking about the other watches that the brand pays homage to, really kind of got me thinking about the 70s. The 70s. Hey, wait, who's that handsome kid? So back in the 70s, there was some really crazy, unique styles, designs, the clothing that the people wore. We had ABBA, we had Elton John. In the movies was John Travolta, Saturday Night Fever. Jaws was out and big. On television was the Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch. The things I remember the most about the 70s, and I look back on great fondness, is Star Wars. I remember my dad taking me to see the very first one in 1977, I believe. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember Kiss. I had this exact Kiss poster on my wall when I was a kid. My favorite candy at the time was BB Bats, if anybody remembers those. And of course, the muscle cars of the 70s. So Kyle from Stratton is a watch fanatic. He's a car fanatic, and that really is what made him want to start this brand with a very 70s inspired feel. The watches take a lot of design elements from watches like the Breitling Top Time and the Datura, the Bull of a Surfboard collection, some other funky brands that I've never even heard of. Just a quick little plug, some of these images were from friends like the guys from Worn and Wound and Watch Blogspot. So, if you guys don't mind, I ripped your videos off the interweb there. So this is going to lead us into the brand. So I'm super excited about these watches. I love the style. I love the construction and everything there is to know about it. So before we go too far into this intro, let's take a look at the Stratton watches, the collections that I have on WatchGauge, and get you guys a bit more familiar with the brand. So on WatchGauge, I committed to two of the collections of Strattons. The one here on your left is the Synchro, and the one here on the right is the Curve Chrono. They both have that 70s style, 70s feel. The biggest difference between the two, just visually before we get into each one in particular, in the Synchro, it's more of a cushion case, and the Curve Chrono is more of a tonneau-shaped case. Little bit confusing in some aspects where what's the difference between a cushion and a tonneau shape. A cushion shape is more like a big square with rounded corners, where you could argue similar to the Synchro here, but this one's got more of that curved sloping sides and more of an elongated kind of look. Now both collections are offered in 2 different sizes each. In the Synchro, this piece here is 44 millimeters, where the one on my wrist is 42. We'll get a closer look at the size difference in a minute. And in the case of the Curve Chrono, it comes in a 39.5 millimeter, and then another piece over here. I'm sorry, this is a 39.5 millimeter, and this is a 42 millimeter. There's not much of a visual difference, but when you put them on your wrist, there's a big difference. So let's take a closer look at the Curve Chrono. So the Synchro is available in 5 different dial variations. We've got the green dial here on the left, black dial on the right. This is a dark brown dial in the center. Next to that is the blue dial. And all the way on the right here is the black DLC version. Every one of the cases is 316 stainless steel, except the DLC version is, as you would imagine, it is a black coated DLC or diamond-like carbon case. See if we can get that in focus there. So this is like the all stealthed out one. The green dial and the blue dial each come on a mesh bracelet, where the black and the DLC come on the racing type of strap with the large holes here, and the brown dial comes with the perforated strap or the small holes. As I had mentioned with the case sizes, there are 2 case variations for each watch. So each watch is available in either 39.5 millimeter or 42 millimeter. It is honestly a little bit difficult to tell the difference between the sizes from a visual standpoint. Let's take the brown dial and the blue dial here, for instance. The brown dial, if I measure the case, is reading 42 millimeters, where the blue dial is, I'm getting a little over 39.5, but the specs from Stratton say 39.5. So these two have at least a 2 millimeter difference, theoretically a 2.5 millimeter difference. Regardless of which case size you get, whether it be the 39 or the 42, the depth of the watch is reading just about 15 for both sizes. Grab the other one here. So just about 15, 14.9, thereabouts. So it's got a lot of heft to it, a nice thickness to the case, and the lug to lug isn't all that drastically different on either the 39 or the 42. So the lug to lug on this piece is 47.4, I'm reading, where on the brown dial version here, 47.5. So all of the Curve Chronos have a dual register chronograph, or a bi-compax, or however you want to call it. So you have 2 sub dials. You've got the date. We've got an internal rotating bezel, which is operated by the crown at 10 o'clock. You have the crown in this at 3 o'clock in the typical position, as well as the chronograph start, stop, and reset. On the steel pieces, I really love how Kyle uses the colors and the contrasting sub-dials and dials, as well as the chapter ring that goes around. And in the case of the black dial version and the brown dial version, you've got a cream color, and then a yellow, then an orange. All of them, as you can see, have orange long second hands for the chronograph. And the functionality of the chronograph. So the Curve is powered by a Seiko V664 Mecha Quartz hybrid. And what that means is it is actually a quartz watch with a mechanical chronograph module. I don't know if that's confusing to some of you or not, but in essence, typically when you've got a quartz chronograph, when you hit that start button here, the second hand will tick once per second. With the Mecha Quartz hybrid, when you start that chronograph, when you activate it, the second hand is sweeping as it would in a mechanical watch. I want to make sure I'm in focus there. So the second hand is actually ticking 5 times per second, which gives it that sweeping feel as if it were an automatic watch. So you have a start, you stop, reset in typical fashion. It is a screw down crown. The water resistance is 10 atmospheres or 100 meters. 1 click out operates the date, 2 of the time. Very, very smooth action on the crown. It screws back in very nicely. The date position is at 6 o'clock. Now the crown at 10 o'clock here, as I mentioned before, operates an internal rotating bezel, also a screw down crown. As I unscrew that, it gives me the ability to rotate that bezel on the inside of the crystal. The purpose of this can be dual fold. It can act as a dual time zone watch or a 2 time zone watch. If you can see, the chapter ring has got 1, 2, 3 with hash marks at the half hour. Or you can use it as a very rudimentary timing mechanism where you set the 12 o'clock position to the minute hand, and as that minute hand moves on, you know how many minutes have elapsed. Not really necessary for this particular watch because it does have a chronograph. And you have, the, as I mentioned before, the long second hand is the chronograph second hand. You have a 60-minute counter at 9 o'clock and a 24-hour subdial at 3 o'clock. The case back, let's peel this plastic off. The case back is inspired by a wheel or a rim of, to me, I would say a vintage sports car. Now I have, as I mentioned, you guys hear me say too much, but I always like to mention, I have a 7.5-inch wrist, and this is the 42 millimeter, and it seems to fit and wear very nicely on my wrist. The tonneau shape plays into that factor. It is curved, and to be really honest, you know, for a watch that's got some size and some heft to it, it's not a light watch per se, but it is very, very comfortable. I absolutely love what Kyle has done with the Curve Chrono. Fantastic collection. Love the dials, love the styling, love the retro 70s feel. And rounding out the specs on the Curve Chrono is there's a very nicely domed sapphire crystal. The hands, the hour markers, and the hour markers on the internal rotating bezel all have great lume on them. And the strap width, in case you guys are the kind of guys that swap between straps, throw on NATOs or whatever the case may be, on the 42 millimeter case is a 22 millimeter width, and on the 39.5 millimeter case, it's a 20 millimeter width. So let's look at the Synchro. I absolutely love the Synchro collection. The Synchro blue that you saw on my wrist before, this is my personal watch. This particular watch is the watch that first caught my eye with Stratton. I think obviously with WatchGauge, the colors being orange for the company and things like that, I'm a big fan of orange, particularly when it's paired together with my other favorite color, blue. So this particular watch is the watch that caught my eye. Very much like the Curve Chrono, the Synchro also comes in 2 sizes. It comes in either a 40 millimeter case or a 44 millimeter case. Now, in my opinion, with the Synchro, there's a bit more of a visual difference in size when you look at the 2 different sizes. Obviously, a 4 millimeter difference is larger than a 2.5 millimeter difference like on the Curve, but the 2 pieces with the blue on them, so you have the blue on the strap here, and this one here happened to be, just for the video purposes, the 40 millimeter case, where the DLC, the black dial, and the silver dial with black subdials, these are 44 millimeter. Every single one of these, however, is available in both sizes. We'll take a look at the measurements here, just to kind of give you a feel for the difference. So we're just at 40 millimeter, as I mentioned. And let's see if I can get the actual edges of the case there. So I'm right by the crown, so it's just at 44 millimeter or so. So the thickness of the cases are 16, just above 16 on the 40 millimeter chrono. Let's see if it's the same on the 44. Just about the same. Now, you might notice a little discrepancy as far as between the two, or between some of the other measurements before. I don't have the best caliper in the world here, but the reason I use this one is because these arms here are plastic and will avoid any damage to any of the watches that we're measuring. The Curve Chrono is also powered by the Seiko VK64 Mecha Quartz Hybrid. Again, quartz movement, mechanical module. Try to avoid some glare there. And again, has that really nice sweeping second hand. That's ticking 5 times per second. For those of you not aware, a mechanical watch, most mechanical chronographs, there are exceptions, but most mechanical chronographs also tick at 5 times per second, giving it that sweeping feel. So, chronograph running, I stopped it, reset, screw down crown. The water resistance on the Synchro is a bit higher than on the Curve. So the Synchro is 20 atmosphere or 200 meters. It's got a sapphire crystal top ring, so it's going to be really, really impervious to any kind of scratching or damage. The other thing I really love is that checkerboard pattern. It does have the hash marks for the 10-minute mark, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. Each one of these seconds has 5 dash marks, or minute markers, I should say, but just really nicely done. Being a racing-inspired watch gives it that checkerboard feel. I love the shape of the subdials here, the chronograph subdials. Just like in the Curve, you've got a 24-hour subdial, 60-minute counter for the chronograph, the long second hand for the chronograph, and the date at 6 o'clock. Nice thickness to it. Beautifully etched case back with the Stratton logo there in the center. Now the DLC case, same thing. These are 316 stainless steel watches. This is the DLC version, the all blacked out. Some people say murdered out, some people say stealth, however you call it. It's got really nice finish to it. On the side of the case here, in the DLC version, as well as the other versions, I should say. But we've got a nice brushed pattern. The bevel is high polish, get some light there, where we've got brushed top of the case. The same situation applies to the stainless steel versions. So it's brushed on the sides, nice bevel, just on the edge there, brushed on the top of the case as well. The lug-to-lug difference on the 40 millimeter watches, the lug-to-lug is 44 millimeters, where the 44 millimeter watches is 49.9, so 50 millimeters. So there is quite a bit of a difference from the lug-to-lug. For me personally, I don't love oversized watches. I have a good friend of mine who actually has a smaller wrist than mine and loves watches that are 45, 46, 47 millimeters. I happen to like 40, 39 to 42 is my real sweet spot. So the 40 millimeter versions work really well for me personally. Nicely domed sapphire crystal. The crystal, I believe, is pretty thick, and it gives a real nice blur to it, a distortion to it as you're kind of looking on an angle. The lume, just like the Curve chronograph, the loom. You've got the hands are heavily loomed, the hour markers, as well as markers on the bezel. Strap sizes still apply as they did with the Curve. The 44mm versions, which are these three here, the black and silver and black, the black and silver, and the DLC that you're looking at. That's a 22mm strap, where the smaller size has a 20mm strap. And just to bring in some 1970s retro to kind of match, I've got Hot Wheels, Corvette, where the body lifts up. You know, these, I actually brought in some of my old stuff I was going to do some kind of photo shoots. This is an original 1970s Stormtrooper. I've got Ben Kenobi, right? 1970s cool stuff. The Stratton has got that 1970s feel, but I could tell you one thing I love is, you know it's new, you know it's modern, you know it's built 10 times stronger and bigger and bolder than the watches might have been back in the 70s. So, just a phenomenal piece, a phenomenal brand. Absolutely love it. And I'm so happy to have partnered up with Kyle and with Straton Watches. So I want to take a second and thank Kyle from Stratton for finally helping me make this partnership between Stratton and WatchGauge a reality. I'm super excited to be an authorized retailer here in the United States. Every watch we sell domestically ships second day FedEx, and international we do FedEx as well. So so thank you so much, Kyle. Can't wait for this this partnership to grow. And whether it's the 1970s styling of the Straton watches, and I've got some funky 1970s styling stuff here. These are my actual Star Wars figures and Matchbox cars from the 70s. So whether it's your nostalgia for the 70s, or whether it's just your love of the way that the Straton watches look, they perform, the way they're constructed, go check them out on WatchGauge.com. Unbelievable brand. Like I said, very, very happy to have them. And so if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, don't forget to throw some comments in the bottom, any questions you might have, whether you like the watches, whatever the case may be, any other brands you think I should be looking at for WatchGauge, anything in the world you want to put down there, comment, I'll get back to you. As I mentioned in my past couple of videos, I'm going to be starting an AMA series, an Ask Me Anything series, so you can either ask me questions in the comments, or you can email me. Email watchgauge@gmail.com. That email address will be changing. It'll be open for a long time, but that will be changing very soon. But for the time being, email watchgauge@gmail.com. In the subject line, put AMA, or Ask Me Anything. Whether it's about the high-end watch market, whether it's about micro brands, whatever the case may be, anything that you can think. I'm going to take those questions and I'm going to do a question and answer video in reply and post that up on YouTube and Facebook. So don't forget to do that. As always, follow us on Instagram, Facebook page, like that, on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And thank you guys so much for everything. Thank you, Stratton. Can't wait to make this thing grow. And thanks for taking the time to watch the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.